Hi, good evening. It's a pleasure to me to be with you in this conference. My presentation it will be about the effect of architecture on the cultural perception of Palestinian society, the example of Nablus. My name is Ahmad Khalilia. I'm from Palestine, Birzeit University Faculty of Architecture and Planning. The researcher began to explore Palestinian architecture by choosing the concept of ownership, which expresses the efforts to change the immaterial reality of societies, and through which the authorities try to improve its ownership by imposing their control and power and imposing a new material reality, which refers to changing identities and imposing different identities. Thus, the researcher combined a material concept with an intellectual concept in order to recognize the extent of its effects on architecture intertwined with the cultural, social, intellectual, and political awareness of Palestinian society. As was the evaluation of identity in its sense also played a major role in shaping an understanding of the city, its architectural, identity, and cultural reflected in society through new architectural formations. While making the architectural analysis of Nablus, we will go through many historical steps that will enable us to understand the political and cultural structure that led to the emergence of this architectural style, which has a different role in affecting the political and social life of the city. The factors which affect the social, political, and cultural life of the city vary from period to period in terms of their area of influence and power of influence. In an authority side, a person who looks at Nablus from far can see the influence of Agha and rulers in the city in every period. We see that there are palaces occupying large areas in the skyline of city. As we see from these two photos, and we will when we will compare the ordinary houses in the city, this structure reflected the power and influence of these families in terms of its location, size, number of rooms, presence of squares and gardens. As for the economic side, one who wandered through the city neighborhoods encounters a huge building with large windows in the upper floors. There are sabbane, superiors, where quality Nablus soups is made. Soup was produced here with olive oil collected from the surrounding valleys. The soup produced here was also sold all over the Ottoman Empire. Therefore, Nablus was considered one of the important centers of soup production. At the height of soup production, there were 30 soup shops in the city of Nablus. This shows that soup shops has become an expression of people's political status and social position. Today, this situation resembles trade centers that shows the power and status of their owners in terms of size and location. The exit phase from the old city started and the new neighborhoods began to emerge in an unusual way outside the city walls. Mashia district has become a symbolic place in mind of the people of Nablus and has been perceived as the neighborhood of the rich. In this way, living outside the borders of the old city has come to mean a social and economic superiority, which is reflected in cultural aspect and collective memory of Nablus society. A newly constructed building was built in the middle of garden and are surrounded by walls from all four sides. The entrance of their buildings were also built in an imposing and attractive architectural style, reflecting the economic and social power of the owner. This style observed in building is completely different from the style seen in building in the old city as seen in the above photo. Balconies and terraces have started to take place in these new buildings, which overlook the city and the surrounding gardens. In addition, bathrooms and kitchens have begun to take place in new buildings in newly building neighborhoods. This is concrete change reflecting the new social views that aims to improve all the social services of the house inside, unlike the old city. The presence of more and large windows in the new building located outside the walls of the old city is striking compared to the old city building. This is due to the social life understanding that tries to open outwards more than the old city in terms of architectural style, with the capacity to reveal different and new structure due to the condition as seen in the below photo. The power of private ownership become more apparent with the exterior of new buildings. This situation was different in buildings in the old city. The exterior doors in the residence of the old city were similar to each other and also reflected the severity of the city. Because the exterior doors, on the one hand, showed that the rich and the poor were equal and that there was no distinction between them. On the other hand, then they ensured the security of the residents, as we see from the photos in beside. All these doors present the ownership of their owners. Its windows were large and wide, unlike the existing building in the old city. The responsibility is now in the administrative part of the city, which is responsibility by the city council. Because these elements which ruled the region had great power on those times. These ruling elements played a political and social role in shaping the architectural style to reflect the development of the state the city was in. The development did not come about suddenly, nor was it made by force by holding a gun to the heads of the residents. On the contrary, it has evolved and developed gradually, and it has connected the stage, each of which reflected the spirit of the city. When we review our previous explanation regarding the laws enacted by Ottoman state regarding the ownership of lands and the reforms and regulation it imposed, we see that a new architectural approach has emerged. Because functional buildings made in modern style such as police station, cafes, squares, schools, and hospitals have emerged. When we look to these two photos, we will understanding the era it was appeared in it. The right one is showing the Empire, Ottoman Empire eras. The second one is showing the Jordanian administrative in Nablus. The 1927 earthquake was a factor that encouraged and accelerated the extension and expansion beyond the boundaries of the old city. As we mentioned before, the British tried to organize the expansion attempts of the city by drawing up a detailed map of the city. The purchase of the land and its use as a square was an act of planning, but relatively unusual for the city of that time. This was actually an act of the state to open people up and a pre-planning of the clock tower to be built 20 years after the land was purchased. With the opening of the square, cafes also emerged and a new social model emerged in architecture that opened outwards. You can see that in the picture beside. As a result, the urban planning and expansion structure was affected. During the Jordanian rule, the King Hussein Palace, which is now a municipality building, was built. The construction of the palace was an architectural landmark at this stage. This innovation was the starting point of a new phase in which a new Jordanian supported architectural style was also promoted, as seen in pictorial design. During this period, the modern architectural style became widespread, with this style continued until Nablus fell in 1967 with the Israeli occupation. This situation led to the emergence of the architectural environment in which three main elements in the field of planning and construction contradict each other. One of them is the traditional elements represented by the building of the old city. Another is the elements that show themselves in the structure and drafts of the colonial period in the region close to the old city. The third is the modern architectural elements based on capitalism represented by shopping malls and commercial complexes as seen in the side photos. This is the big and the huge buildings which is not related to the old city. The picture on the left belongs to the last days of the Ottoman administration. The picture on the right was taken during the Jordanian administration. The reflection of the cultural change between the two paintings is very clear. We can understanding the types of buildings and the type of societies and the street topology and the way of the life in each of these two squares. Thus, as a conclusion, the political exploitation of architecture stands out at every stage of urban formation, including the streets and suburbs of city until today. This situation expresses the importance of architectural spaces in creating a new cultural and social awareness about the city and its inhabitants, even though they are sometimes used in an unplanned and methodless way. Thanks for listening.